this property would have, say, a little equity in the home. But we know that this property does have a mortgage on it, on the property. So what we're doing is we're going to go ahead and approach a seller. So you as a real estate investor will do these 3 boxes again. You as a real estate investor are going to go to a seller, and what we're going to do is we're going to purchase this property subject to the existing loan. So what we're simply doing is we're going to go ahead and close on the property. So we have to first and foremost come up with a purchase price.
We welcome in the magic of sub-2 deals. This is like,
Yep.
you know what's hilarious is like, this is like the new buzzword
Yep.
now. And everyone's like sub-2, sub-2, sub-2. There's some incredible souls teaching it for sure.
Sure.
But this has been around for...
Yeah, I mean, all creative financing deals, I mean, they have it as far back as like the 1600s. Just think about it, like creative financing was like the only way to do real estate back in the day. Right?
Bartering.
You have all the people that came and discovered the land, and then they broke up the land and had to owner finance the land. So let's talk about sub-2s though. So if you watch the previous videos, we talked about lease options, talked about owner financing, and I wanted to go ahead and save subject to for last, because it's almost like integration of kind of every technique you need in creative financing in order to get sub-2s done. And at the end of the day, it's really not super complicated. I think it's always been over dramatized a bit, just because most people don't know how to structure it, and then most are afraid of the due on sales clause. So let's just talk about that just for a brief second, because I actually did a full training on why I believe, again, in my opinion, why I believe that banks don't want to call loans due. Because, I mean, banks are in the business of making money off of their money, right? They're in the business of collecting interest.
Right.
And I pulled together some stats, and I was looking at, I don't have the exact number in my head, but it's expensive for a bank to go through a foreclosure process when they do a due on sales clause.
Yeah.
So if a bank is looking to call a loan due, it means they have to go through a large expense, where you as a real estate investor can actually come in and structure a deal and keep the bank happy by receiving monthly payments consistently on the loan that they originally had. So as long as you are making your payments and making them on time as a real estate investor, then a subject to transaction can certainly be a great technique for you on a lot of these properties. So before we dive into like the actual structure themselves, let's talk about who would actually do a subject to deal, meaning like as a seller. The sellers that we tend to buy subject to deals from tend to be in a position where they need debt relief, meaning they either are behind on payments or they have multiple properties and they have vacancies. A deal that we just recently did up in the Chicago area, this seller was relocating down to Texas. He had been on the market multiple times, and now he lived in Texas and was still making payments on this property up in Chicagoland. So I don't care who you are, nobody likes to make payments on a property that's vacant. And also, most people that aren't real estate investors don't want to rent their house either. I mean, I know when everybody asks us questions that are trying to get involved in real estate, they always want to know, like, why would somebody do this? And the reason why I think most people ask us that is because they're looking to be real estate investors, and so they're seeing how to actually capitalize and turn it into an asset, where your average everyday homeowner is not looking at it that way. It was like their home, right? They don't look at it as something that they want to rent or make money off of or take care of or get in the business of real estate. But you also have a lot of sellers that have little to no equity in their homes. I don't have the exact stat, but I know it's hundreds of thousands of homes over the past year that are either upside down or are at about a break even. And that's because buyers during COVID were buying the interest rate, not the purchase price. And then as soon as the market flipped or started to slow down and go on the other side, now their equity in their homes are they're non-existent. So again, I don't care who you are. If you want to move, nobody in their right mind, even if they have millions of dollars, wants to pay money in order to get out of a house. So in our structures, we can go ahead and help them walk away. One person comes to mind, and that was we were buying a property in the state of Connecticut. This seller was he and his family were moving to their grandkids in Washington State. He was actually a banker for 20-some years. Had no idea that this type of structure worked or even existed. This seller had a mortgage on his property, but he also had a HUD lien too. So he basically had to come out of pocket almost $15,000 if he were to sell in the traditional market. So I was able to step in, show him how we could structure this deal, and he was able to literally walk away scot-free, and we went ahead and just continued to make payments. So let's talk about what that actually means to do a sub 2 as far as a structure standpoint.
Yes. What is a sub 2? Because it's such a buzzword, and like when you really ask somebody what it is, they're like, oh, it just means like you can buy properties without banks or credit. Yeah. It's like, yes, but what's the technical ones? Yeah. Let's break it down.
Yeah, so let's talk about this. So subject to really means buying a property subject to something. So what most people think of it as buying a property subject to the existing mortgage on the property. But you can also buy it subject to liens on the house, tax liens, things of that sort as well. But in this circumstance, we're talking about buying it subject to the existing loan. Now, I know if you're watching this, you're like, how the heck do you buy the property and keep the mortgage in place? There's actually a section on the closing documents, if you've ever done a traditional sale, that literally says subject to, and in those documents, or in that document, in that place, you'd actually put that existing loan. So what we're doing is we're looking for sellers that have a home that has either little to no equity in the property. Now, don't get me wrong, we can do what we would consider a subject to owner financing deal, but I won't make your brain spin just yet. So this property would have, say, a little equity in the home. But we know that this property does have a mortgage on it, on the property. So what we're doing is we're going to go ahead and approach a seller. So you as a real estate investor will do these 3 boxes again. You as a real estate investor are going to go to a seller, and what we're going to do is we're going to purchase this property subject to the existing loan. So what we're simply doing is we're going to go ahead and close on the property. So we have to first and foremost come up with a purchase price. Now, typically the purchase price on these properties, if there's little to no equity, is the exact amount of the mortgage balance. So they're not getting anything, but they're also not paying anything. In most of these circumstances too, they could be behind on payments, so that you have to catch up that loan before you go ahead, or have the seller catch up the loan. We've also negotiated that before you close on it, on the property, and if there's any other challenges in order to make sure that the title can actually transfer. Anything that's clouding title we need to take care of in order for that to come in place. So you're going to purchase the property. You're of course going to agree upon a monthly payment, which is typically the exact monthly payment, principal, interest, taxes, insurance on the property. So what you're just simply doing is agreeing to just start making payments on that loan as long as you get the title. Right. This title, so title transfer to you, but the difference in this between us and a traditional sale is the loan is going to remain in place. So the loan stays attached to the seller's credit, is not paid off. So the loan remains in place. This is really beneficial for you as a real estate investor, because right now the loans that have been written over the past, say, 3 to 5, 7 years are much lower in an interest rate than the loans that are written right now. So we have deals right now where we're taking over properties or purchasing properties and making the payments that are at 3%, 2.75%. Where right now any other real estate investor can't get anything less than what, 6, 7, 8?
Oh, it's like 7.75 now for an investment loan.
There you go.
And regular residential loans are in the low 7s. Yeah.
That's wild. So most importantly in this, so title's transferred to you. You have ownership of the property. You are now, as the investor, agreeing to maintain the loan. I did not say assume. The difference between assuming and subject to are 2 different things. So subject to means you're buying it subject to the existing loan, the one that's currently in place and it still remains attached to seller's credit. if you are assuming the loan, that means you have to go through an underwriting process and assume it and personally guarantee the debt. Remember, we don't do that in creative financing. So you're agreeing to contractually maintain that mortgage. Okay? And of course, again, since you own the property, I'm always looking to do a rent to own. But because these deals typically have no end date, so in the agreement that I have with our seller, we are never telling them that we're going to pay off their loan at any point in time. And this is important because when you buy real estate subject to the existing loan, there's a couple things that need to happen, right? Assuming that right now the house is, or the actual value of the property is equal to the mortgage, right? It's equal to the mortgage. So that means that two things have to happen. One is, in order to actually build equity in this deal, the property has to appreciate and the loan balance has to pay down. And then that's where your equity is as an investor. So you have the long play in this. So we never tell a seller that we're going to cash it out anytime soon. So this means that you can do whatever you'd like to do in this circumstance, like the seller financing, which means you can sell rent to own, you can have it as a rental, you can go ahead and what we would consider owner finance it because you own title. You can actually create a new mortgage with a buyer, and now you can become the bank and transfer title now to the buyer, and now you're a bank. So lots of different ways in order to exit this, and the reason why I'm sharing that with you is if you're listening to this or watching this and you're like, hey, I want to get into creative financing because I want to get on the acquisition side and do more deals, then however you want to exit is up to you. We just tend to exit via rent to own so that way we can tap into our 3 payday system and start getting non-refundable deposits and cash flow and building equity in the deal. In circumstances like this, though, let me share with you an even better exit on these, and then I'll back up. So because I own title on the property, because my LLC owns it, and because I have no end date, what we like to structure is first we'll go ahead and sell it. We're going to go ahead and sell it to a buyer. And we're going to sell it to a buyer on a rent to own program. So the buyer right now has a rent to own. But after the buyer has made all of their non-refundable deposits, so let's assume that their deposits are on time, check. Their payments are on time, check. What I'll do is when they come close to the end of their term, I'll approach them and say, hey, guess what? What I can do is instead of having you go to a bank, the original option was like, go get a mortgage. What I'll actually do is because you've been so great, I'll actually finance the property. So now you have one option as a buyer, you have two options as a buyer, and now we'll go ahead and finance the property. Now what this does as a real estate investor, as you turned originally maybe a 36-month deal, and now you create a new, say, 30-year amortized loan at a higher interest rate, and now you've turned this into a 30-year deal of, passive income.
That's amazing.
So just another opportunity there. So know that when it comes to subject to deals, don't be alarmed or don't be cautious when it comes to those types of transactions because you don't know exactly how they work in and out. Know that it's a perfect opportunity because there's no challenges with legalities. There's no challenges where it's just a contractual challenge between the original seller and the bank. And know that it's very rare that a subject to or a due on sales clause gets called. And you're in a really strong position as a real estate investor because, again, you didn't personally guarantee the debt. The one thing you always want to be protective of is if you have a tenant buyer in place, you want to make sure that those payments are always on time, morally and ethically, because the only person that really loses in this deal if a due on sales clause gets called is the buyer. So we need to make sure that we put them in a good spot. But here's another way to protect yourself. So when you're going to go ahead and acquire a property, this is what our attorney suggested we do. So this is kind of like next level. We're past 101 and we're going to like 103 or 4.
303.
Yeah,
That's
so
what
when you purchase this property, there's something that's called the Garn-Saint-Germain Act. And what the Garn-Saint-Germain Act states is that a due on sales clause cannot be called if it's for estate or tax planning purposes. So this means that like if the sale of a property or the title is transferred and it was for estate or tax planning purposes, a due on sales clause cannot be called. So what we do is we will go ahead and purchase this property. So we'll close on this property and we'll close on in a trust. Typically a family trust labeled, say we're buying from the Smith family and it's at 123 Jump Street. It would be 123 Jump Street, Smith Family Trust. Now this family trust is what's purchasing the property. So this is what actually owns the property. And then the beneficiary is your LLC. It's not foolproof in any way. But when we're having conversations with our attorneys, they said that this is a way in which would put some additional distance between you and the bank. And so when a bank goes to ever look at who has ownership of the property, all they see is the Smith Family Trust. And they don't dig any further. And again, most importantly, so you make them on time.
That is like a $1 million nugget, just so that you guys know. Absolutely the way that you bypass those due on sale clauses, which is incredible. This is how you can actually do these deals, because most people are like, well, when you transfer title of it, that means everything gets shifted over. So this is kind of your Willy Wonka ticket again. To sub 2 deals.
Yeah, 100%. And it's all about, in creative financing, it's all about limiting your liability and then also, morally and ethically doing the right thing. Because in creative financing, I think it's very easy to go ahead and do subject to deals, right? It's very easy to go in, if you're not a moral and ethical person in real estate, go do a subject to deal and go ahead and let the buyer and seller hang out to dry. But if you're doing it right. These are amazing ways in which to solve problems that most people can't. And this subject to deals 100% should be in your repertoire when it comes to solving people's problems.
Yes, and it's the most complicated sandwich out of all of them. So what do we call this one?
Italian.
You got there's the mortadella, there's the capricola, there's the provolone.
That's what I'm saying.
Roll. Yeah, this one's a bit more complicated, you guys. Out of all 3 techniques that we've shown you, I think this one is definitely the most complicated. There's a lot happening. But as you can see, all of these have their own particular structures. You've got to understand the structures in order to structure the deals. Pretty much you can do whatever you want as long as it's
here's the importance of it, right? Because it takes a little bit more brain power, not everyone's doing it, right? Everyone wants to talk about it, but no one's doing it. So once you have the skill set to be able to do this, now it becomes a great tool in your tool belt. And of course, that's the reason why most people seek out coaching, either from myself, my family team, or people like you, Pam, so that way we can walk you through these deals and so you can execute at a high level, even if you've never done it before. So just following the step-by-step process and nailing down a type of technique is extremely valuable for you and your portfolio.
Absolutely. Another tool in the tool belt. Another sandwich to remember in that beautiful mind of yours if you're trying to put together this deal.
We got a sandwich shop here.
We got a whole sandwich shop here, for those who really work well with these types of examples. Like for me, it's like, okay, well, the sub 2 is the Italian sandwich. Then we've got the turkey sandwich, which one would the turkey sandwich be?
Owner financing.
Yeah. Turkey sandwich.
Turkey sandwich.
And then the other one. PB&J.
PB&J for at least it's easy. When you're kids, right? You start with a PB&J, and then you move to turkey, and then once you graduate to an adult, you eat Italian.
Yes. And on that note, wrapping up the Creative Finance 101 and really the techniques behind them and how to actually structure these deals. So Zach, thank you. And on to the next video, my friend, which is how do we practically incorporate these, when we've been trained a very specific way. And this is specifically targeting real estate agents out there that, have been taught the bank is your best friend. They may or may not be in this market.
Could be both, but you might as well have both banks and creative in your back pocket.
Heck yes. So we'll get to that one next. Stay tuned, guys. Thank you.